So I was sitting across from my assistant after what had been a very successful client lunch, trying to give her some professional feedback, not criticism, not a reprimand, just something I genuinely thought would help her career. And then she started crying. And the worst part, I still don't know if I did anything wrong. Let me back up a little. Earlier this year, I hired a new assistant. I'll call her Amy. From day one, Amy was impressive. She was organized, sharp, and incredibly detail-oriented, the kind of person who notices things before anyone else does. Within a couple months, she was already catching mistakes I hadn't even seen. Honestly, she made my job easier, so much so that I actually gave her a raise pretty quickly. She hadn't asked for one, I just felt like she deserved it. Now, my job revolves around business development. Big deals, long negotiations, relationship building. And if you've ever worked in that world, you know something important. Lunch meetings aren't really about lunch. They're part of the deal. The atmosphere matters, the pacing matters, even the tiny details matter. So when we started closing in on a pretty big client deal, I decided to give Amy the lead on the account. She'd done a ton of the work already, and honestly, she'd earned the spotlight. So I scheduled a Friday lunch with the client and told him Amy would be joining us. He had no problem with it. Actually, I was excited for her. This was her moment. Friday comes around, we meet the client at the restaurant. Right away, Amy is fantastic, professional, confident, prepared. She answers questions smoothly, explains parts of the project clearly, and I can see the client nodding along. I'm sitting there thinking, yeah, bringing her was the right call. Everything is going perfectly. Then the food menus arrive. Now, I should explain something. There's this unwritten rule in business lunches. You follow the client's lead. If they order something light, you order something light. If they skip dessert, you skip dessert. It sounds small, but these tiny signals keep the meeting moving naturally. And trust me, I learned that lesson the hard way. I once ordered spaghetti at a client lunch, marinara sauce everywhere. Spent half the meeting pretending I wasn't wearing half the menu on my shirt. Another time, I ordered a cheeseburger, only to discover the client was a strict vegetarian. That was a long lunch. So yeah, these things matter. The client ordered a burger and fries. Simple. I ordered the same thing. Amy ordered a well-done steak, mashed potatoes, steamed vegetables, and a side of soup. Now listen, none of that is wrong. It's literally on the menu. She can order whatever she wants. But here's what happened. The client and I finished eating at about the same time. Amy was still halfway through her meal. And then another 10 minutes passed. Then another 5. Now the conversation had naturally wrapped up. The deal had been discussed, and we were just kind of sitting there, waiting. If you've ever been in that situation, you know exactly what I mean. That weird moment where everyone's done except one person. Then the waitress came back. Would anyone like dessert? The client said no. I said no. Amy said, I'll have the cheesecake and a coffee. At that point, I made a mental note, not because I was angry, but because I realized something important. I had never explained the etiquette of client lunches to her. That part was on me. So after the meeting, once the client left, I pulled Amy aside. I kept the tone casual. I said, hey, you did a great job today, seriously. And I meant that. Then I added, there's just one thing I probably should have mentioned earlier. During client lunches, it's usually best to follow the client's lead. I explained the general rule: light food, match their pace, skip dessert if they skip dessert, not because of the food itself, but because it keeps the meeting energy flowing. Simple conversation, or at least I thought it was. Amy's expression changed immediately, and the first thing she said was, I can pay you back for the meal. That caught me off guard. I said, no, it's not about the money. I'm happy to buy lunch. But she kept trying to turn it into a money issue, like if she just reimbursed me, the whole conversation could disappear. So I tried explaining it differently. I told her why I usually order burgers or wraps. Easy to eat, quick bites. You can answer questions without awkward pauses. I even told her some of my own mistakes to lighten the mood. The spaghetti incident, the vegetarian client disaster. I wanted her to know everyone learns this stuff the hard way. And then she started crying. Not tearing up, actually crying. And through the tears, she said, it's because I'm fat, isn't it? I froze for a second because that hadn't even crossed my mind. Not once. The conversation was about business etiquette, strategy, professional timing. But in that moment, Amy had connected everything I said to something completely different, something she had clearly been carrying long before this conversation. So I told her as clearly as I could, Amy, this has nothing to do with your weight. This is about strategy. I'm telling you this because you're good at what you do, and I want to help you succeed. She nodded, but she was still upset when she left. And I just stood there thinking, did I handle that wrong? Later that night, I kept replaying the conversation in my head, and I realized something. The lunch itself, that wasn't even the real issue anymore. The meeting was still successful, the client was happy, Amy had done excellent work. What stuck with me was her reaction, because the truth is, in client-facing roles, feedback is unavoidable. Sometimes it stings. Sometimes it catches you off guard. But being able to receive that feedback, that's one of the most important professional skills there is. I didn't yell. I wasn't insulting. I shared my own mistakes. And still, something about that conversation hit a completely different nerve. And I started wondering, maybe it wasn't what I said. Maybe it was when I said it, right after the meeting, when emotions were still high. Would it have landed differently the next day? I honestly don't know. A few days later, I checked in with Amy. Things were professional, maybe a little more guarded than before, but she was still doing excellent work, so I left it alone. But the whole situation stuck with me, because I genuinely don't think the feedback itself was wrong. Someone once had to teach me those same lessons. Otherwise, I'd still be ordering spaghetti at client meetings. But intentions don't always equal impact. Sometimes the right advice lands at the wrong moment, and suddenly a simple conversation turns into something much bigger. So now I'm curious what you think. Was I wrong for bringing it up? Should I have just let it go? Or was that exactly the kind of feedback a good mentor is supposed to give? Let me know in the comments. I genuinely want to hear where people land on this one. And if you've ever been on either side of a conversation like this, I'd love to hear your story too. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.